in effect, we're using old data to inform new reality. And we just assume, well, I've done this before, it's me still here, so I'll keep doing this. What we miss is that the context has changed. You're not the same age, same health. You don't have the same demands that you had early career or 5 years ago. Your resources around you may be different. They could be higher, lower, different. So assuming that everything is the same and that it's in your personality and independent of any context is a misconception that really is not helpful. So what we want is to really instead look at the fuller picture, and then we have a chance of making things way more resilient.
Welcome to Leadership, the podcast where leadership meets real-world insights. In each episode, you can eavesdrop on exclusive conversations with top thought leaders, best-selling authors, and experts in leadership, communication, relationships, culture, and everything else that shapes your effectiveness in the workplace and in your personal life. Leadership is here for you. Now, here's our host, himself a seasoned coach and best-selling author, Dr. Roger Dean Duncan.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to another episode of Leadership. In a world that celebrates grit, but quietly punishes vulnerability, resilience has become both a buzzword and a blind spot. In this episode of Leadership, we're pulling back the curtain with someone who's not just studied resilience, she's built a blueprint for it. Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier is a psychologist, executive coach, and author of the award-winning book, The Resilience Plan, a strategic approach to optimizing your work performance and mental health. MH, as she prefers to be called, is one of the rare voices who bridges clinical insight with corporate reality, helping leaders navigate burnout, complexity, and the quiet erosion of well-being. If you've ever assumed resilience was something you either have or don't have, this conversation will challenge that assumption, because resilience isn't a trait, it's a strategy. Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier, also known as MH, welcome to Leadership.
Thank you. Thank you, Roger. Thrilled to be here.
Let's start with this. How do you define resilience in today's high-pressure work culture?
And that's an excellent question to start with, because there are actually many definitions. Looking at the academic literature, the one I'm going with, and many are, is our ability to go through adversity and come out even stronger. Okay, so there is a few important elements here. Number one, adversity. Often we think of it as an acute moment, and it does include acute moments, but it also includes the chronic demands. We need to keep that in mind as well. And it includes not just the demands we wish we didn't have, but also even at times positive ones. We have wanted them, but they are very demanding. And then there's this element of growth. So we are learning from this situation and growing from it. It dives into a number of elements. Do we have the capacity, or do we have the behaviors to make it happen, and then the outcomes to grow?
So what role does your background as a clinical psychologist play in shaping your approach to resilience?
And I would say, Roger, there is this part of my background that plays an important role, and then there is the other part of my background, the business training, the experience as a junior leader, a middle manager, and a C-suite leader. And it's pairing these two together that created my approach to resilience. Because if we only look at it, and it's important to look at it from the psychology angle, so everything we know in terms of best practice, what informs a resilience, what makes the biggest difference, there's a lot of excellent information to be had here. What I kept seeing with people I worked with was they had the knowledge. If we could make this happen, that would be all fantastic. But what was challenging was implementing, given all the demands they're facing as leaders in their work. And so for me, having that knowledge, having been in the fire, having the knowledge of that literature as well, but also the experience, it's bringing these two together that created an approach that is both very much research-based, but digested in a way that we can actually bring it in our very busy leaders' lives.
So you had experience in the war zone, so to speak.
In the corporate war zone, yes.
Yeah, okay. So what misconceptions about resilience do you encounter most often?
I would say you mentioned it in the introduction, it's this assumption that it is part of our personality. I've seen myself be resilient a number of times. I can point to these experiences. People around me have seen me being like this. They've told me, oh, you're so resilient. You're the rock, you're the rock of the team, the family,
Right.
the group of friends, all these things. And so you get to a point where you assume that it is who you are. And if it is who I am, then of course I don't need to take any action. It's already there. But it isn't. It is not a personality trait. It is, if we want to bring a bit of the research on this, it is related to some personality traits. For example, optimism, which is a personality trait, has been correlated with a tendency in general, not always necessarily, but to have a bit of higher resilience. But resilience in itself, that's not a personality trait. And therefore, it's more helpful to remind ourselves that it is a state. So something we can, and I would argue should, influence.
So why do so many professionals assume that they are resilient? And what's the danger in that?
I know. I think the main reason why, because we see it a lot, I think it's because, and we don't think of it this way in the moment, but in effect, we're using old data to inform new reality. So we've gone through all these things. We've been successful in fixing, going through all these aspects. And we just assume, well, I've done this before. It's me still here, so I'll keep doing this. What we miss is that the context has changed. Your own context. You're not the same age, same health. You don't have the same demands that you had early career or 5 years ago. Your resources around you may be different. They could be higher, lower, different. And so this context has changed. Assuming that everything is the same and that it's in your personality and independent of any context is a misconception that really is not helpful. So what we want is to really instead look at the fuller picture, and then we have a chance of making things way more resilient.
Right. Now, you compare resilience planning to a business plan. Can you walk us through that analogy?
Yeah. Specifically, Roger, I would say to strategic planning.
Okay.
And it came as I started having to explain more to individuals I worked with as to why we want to be strategic about our resilience. And of course, a lot of individuals in corporate or even entrepreneurs, and even if we're not in these particular roles, everyone will resonate with this. But we can imagine that when we're launching a new product in an organization, we don't just have a great idea and say, great, let's launch it. We have a great idea, and then we have conversations about it. Eventually, a strategic plan where we'll say, who else is offering this kind of product? How much are people paying for it? What kinds of forces may impact the demand for it in the short, moderate, long term? We're asking all these questions. Okay? So the same way, if we're in our individuals' lives here and within our team, organization, and overall personal life as well, if all we say is, yeah, I'd like to increase my resilience, without a plan, and there will be all kinds of variables around that will possibly derail, influence it, and it will not necessarily happen. If instead we ask similar questions to a strategic plan. Okay, what are my values? What demands am I facing? What are my resources, my sources of supply? What's my overall context? Then we're going to be able to have a plan that is aligned with your particular situation. It'll be customized and much more likely to be successful.
Well, it sounds like it could be as simple. Maybe this is too simple, but it seems to me that it might apply. If you are in business and you are launching a new product or maybe merging with another organization and you anticipate that there will be bumps in the road, you might plan for your own resilience by saying to yourself, I need to get more sleep. I need to exercise more. And you kind of go down a checklist of things that you can do to help you deal with what you anticipate will be some bumps in the road. Is that part of what you're talking about?
Yes, it would be part of a plan in this particular situation. You're front loading, in effect, right? You're being proactive. You're increasing your baseline such that when all of these demands or bumps will happen, you'll come to them with an even better approach. And if you know these bumps or you suspect these bumps may be there, we ideally even want to do that, the proactive approach, and planning for what will be the reactive approach when the bumps happen, right? So we can have a full plan.
So what are some of the most effective exercises or practices that you've seen and taught people to cultivate resilience?
Yes. So what I'll start with is what we know from the literature, the research, the best practices, which I'm pretty sure you and everyone listening to us know. We could come up with that list, no problem there. But it's still important to know what these are, because sometimes there will be a list of 15 things that we could be doing, and they're not all created equal. So the top 4 variables that have been most researched showing the most impact on our individual resilience, because we'll perhaps talk also about team resilience and even organizational resilience, because it is a system, right? It's not just in us as individuals.
Sure.
But the individual part is one part of this system. So as individuals, 4 key variables, and you'll know them. The first one is exercise, but within exercise, 3 types: cardio, strength training, and you're wondering what's the third. It's meditative type activity. Meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, something like that. So that's the first, exercise. The second, nutrition. Huge impact on our resilience, way more than we think. We've got research coming out, literally asking how colorful is your plate to assess how your mood will likely be.
Right.
It's fairly strong, the association. It's not as light or minimal as we sometimes assume. Third one is sleep. Yes, we do want 7 to 8 hours, and it does include not working on your phone until 5 minutes before.
Right.
And the fourth one, relationships. Spending time with people we enjoy spending time with. Don't have to put your heart on the table. You can if you want, but it's not necessary. It's spending time with people we enjoy spending time with. So we could have guessed these, right? They make sense. They sound good.
Sure.
The challenge is in working sometimes very busy weeks, hopefully not always 80 hours, but at times a very large amount of hours. How do we make these things happen? And then that is where it will differ from individual to individual based on their context. The context of someone who also has 3 young children versus someone who has other demands in their lives will be different.
So what role does self-awareness play in building resistance? That list you just mentioned, it just reminds me, yes, I'm going to go to the gym this afternoon. I'm starting the Mediterranean diet, etc. But how about self-awareness? I need to be more self-aware about what pulls me away from those good things I ought to be doing. So what role does that play in all of this?
Critical role. And here is sometimes the analogy I use on that. Sometimes people will say, well, yeah, I'll just know if there's a problem. In the 0 to 10 scale, they're sort of fine until they're at like 0.5 of resilience left. And then they say, okay, well, let's do something about it now because I'm really not feeling good.
Right.
Well, then it's similar to if we were in our business and we said, no, I don't need to look at the financial statements. Just let me know if we're close to bankruptcy.
Okay.
Right? No,
That's
we
right.
don't. We want to look at these financial statements. We want to look at them often, find the little indication of perhaps this movement going in this direction as early as we can so that we can act. That's the analogy for that self-awareness. The more we're paying attention, the easier it will be to catch early trends, take actions. It won't require actions that are as drastic, and it'll be much easier. And here's a very simple way to do this for very busy individuals who are like, MH, no, I only notice it if I'm down at 0.5 and I don't have time to be self-aware for 2 hours every day. Okay. Go home, print a calendar, put it at a place that you visit every evening where you brush your teeth perhaps, and every night put a number, 0 to 10 scale. Just generally, how are you feeling today? 10, fabulous. 0, did not get out of bed. Find the nuance, put a number. This is not a scientific instrument. This is an MH-generated instrument for people who are busy. And yeah, it will be internally valid because you're the same rater every time. But what it does, number one, it doesn't take a lot of time. So that's the first thing we're trying to reach here. But you will pay attention. It will take you a few seconds. So you have that time. And you will see it. 9.5, 10, 9.5, 7, 8, 6.5, 6, 5.5. You're going to catch it before you're down to 0.5, right? And that's could be an example of a very simple tool that increases your self-awareness.
Well, that sort of thing definitely works. It kind of falls under the category of a habit that I confess to, and that is if I have a to-do list and I do something that wasn't on the list, sometimes I will put it on the list so I have the pleasure and the endorphin of marking it off as completed.
Yes, very good. Self-efficacy building right there, right? Yes, I can do this.
So how do you help clients identify helpful thought patterns that sabotage resilience?
Unhelpful thoughts can very much get in the way, really. And sometimes it is the way I help them identify them. Well, literally, and that comes now from the cognitive behavior therapy model and the psychology side of things. But I'll just invite them to think when they're in that moment where they make the opposite decision to what they would like to do. What are they thinking? So, for example, let's say we're just talking today and you thought, yeah, meditation, I've always known I should, and I haven't been doing this. So, yeah, maybe I'll try this. And then you realize each time you're about to do that 2-minute meditation, you find something else to do, like, an email or something else. Well, then the question would be, okay, think of the last time this happened. And what went through your head in that second, in that moment, where you decided, instead of the 2-minute meditation, I'm going to do the email? Well, usually it's something like, I've got so many emails, I need to knock them off. Or, I'm fine for right now on meditation, it's not that important. And it's realizing the thoughts. So what you're saying is, it's not that important, email is more important. Really? Really? And then changing that. It is important, I'll do the emails in 2 minutes. So all we've done now is catch the thing that was going on in your head and being not helpful, realizing it's there, back to your point about self-awareness, and changing it to what aligns with my goals, my values. In this case, I'm going to invest in my resilience because there will be bumps, there will be demands.
It's reminding me of years ago, I traveled to a particular city and stayed at a DoubleTree hotel. And I believe they still do this. When you check in, they would give you 2 freshly baked, very large, very caloric chocolate chip cookies. And I knew I didn't need them. And so I would say to myself, all right, I don't really need these, but they're free, and I hate to just leave them on the counter. So I'd take them up to my room, hang up my clothes, and start eating one of the cookies. And then I got more disciplined, and I'd say, well, I'm going to take them home to the kids, but I would eat them on the airplane. And then I finally got to the point where I realized I just need to tell them no thanks. I needed to catch myself. I needed to be more self-aware of what the situation was. Now, I didn't get to the point where I refused to go to that particular hotel. I just got to the point where I had developed the discipline to tell myself, no, you don't need that.
Yes. It's a fabulous example because I think we've all been in situations like this, heard stories of individuals who manage their own business or even their own personal finance, have an account where they'll put the savings, but then when they really need it to pay their credit cards, they will take it. And so the savings, they'll accumulate, basically.
Right.
And either you get to a point where you're going to be firm enough with your commitment to not touch it, or you have to open a separate account in a different bank that you'd have to go to in person, right? This is an example that Mike Michalowicz was giving in one of his books. So, but whatever the rule, you need to create it. Mae Musk was talking about how at some point she decided to, when she's going to hotels, ask them to remove the snacks and the alcohol from the room. So that way, that removes the decision. It just makes it simple. It's not there.
Exactly.
So, but we have to see sometimes just our desire, clarity on the goal will make it happen. And sometimes we'll need to add what we call choice architecture. We're just creating the environment around us so that the right choice will be the only choice.
Sure. And with the credit card example, maybe the person could just decide, I'm going to quit spending so much money on things that I don't really need.
That's another idea.
Your change initiative has the budget. The strategy looks solid, and everyone's nodding along in the meetings. But for some reason, it's going nowhere. Dr. Roger Dean Duncan knows why. After 40 years in the trenches with top business leaders, he knows that change fails when organizations lack the right foundations: trust, accountability, and real communication. Dr. Duncan's free 10-minute assessment shows you exactly where your organization stands. Answer a few straightforward questions that reveal your true change readiness level. Don't waste months discovering the hard way. Get your free assessment today at leadershop.net/change. Again, that's leadershop.net/change.
So what are the earliest signs of burnout that most people miss? We hear so much about burnout these days. What are the early warning signs?
Yes. And I'll modify your question if I can.
Please.
It's not that we miss them, is that we disregard. So we saw them.
Yeah, they're there.
They're there. We saw them and we said, not important. I don't have time. It will be fine. I just need to keep going. I'll take care of it later. Any of those type of approaches. So they're there and we notice them. It's not like we absolutely did not notice that we're more impatient. Absolutely did not notice that our concentration is not quite what it was. Absolutely did not notice that the sleep is down. We're just not getting much hours. We're noticing these things, but we're saying, I'm so resilient. I'm fine. I'm good. I'm going to keep going. And so these are examples of sign, right? That irritability, concentration. Of course, the crying is an easy one, but even that people will disregard, like finding themselves being more emotional and just saying, I don't have time for this. One that often people will actually miss because they don't even know it's a sign is not feeling anything. And so they'll come to me and say, MH, I am in the most demanding time of my career and I am zen. I'm like, oh, tell me more about this. And they'll say, yeah, the thing is pretty much on fire. It's absolute chaos. And I'm like this. I'm like, oh, okay. What else? Well, things that usually would have frustrated me and I would have been all over this. And then I'm like, okay, how about things that usually would have made you happy? And then they realize, same thing, flat line. So feeling nothing is a sign that people miss, mostly just because they don't know it's one, but it is one to pay attention to as well.
When you use the term flat line, it reminded me of a client of mine one time who was clearly overworking, clearly out of balance. He was in turmoil all the time. But he said everything was all right because he had his cardiologist on speed dial. And I told him, I didn't think that was a good sign. we need to talk about a few things.
Yes, yeah, we do. Absolutely. We want to pay attention to all these signs and know having the cardiologist. And it serves as perhaps a protection, but sometimes it's in talking to others about their strategies that leaders will realize, or anyone, in this case a leader, will realize how that sounds and having someone else challenge it.
Sure. So what's your advice for someone who feels sort of overwhelmed by the idea of planning their mental health?
One option is to remind yourself to consider this the same way you've considered your physical health or your financial health, which you could argue that's overwhelming too.
And they're all sort of interconnected too.
They are. They actually really are. We do have research on this showing the interconnections are in all directions.
Right.
So it's not just, if you're, say, financially stressed, you may experience anxiety or mood problems. Yes. But it also goes from financial to physical to financial. It literally, the interactions are everywhere. So I would say, think about some of the actions you're successful at in other areas of health. Like, is there something you do about your physical health that you find it works for you? You're able to do it. It's good. Yeah, I managed to commit to 1 apple a day. That's what I've always done. It works. I can do this. Okay. Well, then find one thing that you will commit to doing on your mental health, for example. For example, could be every morning you're having tea or coffee while it's brewing or while the kettle is boiling. You sit down. You don't do other things in the kitchen. You sit down close to the kitchen and you close your eyes, and that's your meditation right there. That may be 1 minute, but it will be doable. So it's finding the smaller steps, often finding what's worked for you in other areas and using that same approach. And of course, sometimes I ask this question, what do you do for physical health? And people say, I got a personal trainer. Okay, well, maybe you need someone on the mental health side that will either be a psychologist, your executive coach, someone, and they will refer to each other. Sometimes you work with a psychologist, they realize you also need a coach, the reverse as well. But you need, if this is what works for you, having your person, get your person.
It's kind of an accountability partner.
Accountability partner, and sometimes they'll help different perspectives, get to broaden your perspectives or ask questions you didn't have time or you just don't have the space to ask yourself, right?
Right. Yeah. So what should leaders know about fostering resilience in their teams?
So important. And thank you for asking this, because there's been a bit of the resilience conversation that at some point became too focused on just the individual. Right? Making it a redemption story, like in the movies, right? This one individual has extreme hard time and on their own, they get out of it and that's it. It's not an individual sport or situation. Right. Resilience is very much connected to others around us. As a leader, if nothing else, what you could do is just have it on the agenda of your next team meeting. You just put resilience there and you just share with the team that this is something that's very important for you, ensuring that as a team, we can go through adversity and come out even stronger. Same definition as what I used earlier. And then you can move to other agenda items. Doesn't need to be longer than this for right now. At least we've started the conversation. But then as the conversation continues, you can, for example, increase as much as you can elements of what's the psychological safety of our team. If we have psychological safety in the team, we'll be able to work together better, which we need in order to go through adversity and come out even stronger. Right? Part of the factors we want to look at in psychological safety is being able to speak up, to talk about the workload, for example, which now has a very direct connection with our resilience. So that's an example. On the personal side, you could change. Here's an example. You could change, just add 1 notch of how much you're talking about your own efforts, because want it or not, as a leader, you're influencing others. Sometimes we're in the more, I'm just like one of the team members and everyone influences each other. Yes, it's true. And you're also the leader of that team, so what you do influences even more.
Sure.
So instead of saying, how was your weekend? Great weekend, went for whatever it is, a nice walk, a bike ride, just add, I went for my bike ride and made sure I went, even if it was raining, because I know how demanding this week will be. And I wanted to build my resilience. So what now you're doing is you're sharing that this is on your radar. It's important we all pay attention, and possibly gives permission and invites others to think about it as well. So combination, and there are many others, but these are some examples of actions.
So open and honest communication is good in every relationship.
Yes, it is. It would be true for our couple relationship, family relationship, friends. Yes.
Now, after a demanding day, how do you personally recharge? What do you do?
Well, and in line, I do try, Roger, to apply my own recommendations. So I would say I do things before the demanding days are coming, so that we can proactively increase that baseline. So I do a lot of that. But after a demanding day, for me, and each person will be different, finding what aligns with the research and what works for you. But for me, it's definitely the cardio outside. So if I am close enough to nature, it will be in nature, going for a hike or a walk, if I can, either by the water or in the mountains. Otherwise, it will be a fast walk outside. Used to be a run, but now I've got a knee situation, so now it's a fast walk.
I'm told that walking is the best exercise. I've been told that by several physicians. I hope they're right, because that's what I do.
I was going to ask, what do you do? So you do that as well. Okay.
Yeah, I wear a pedometer. I count the steps. I make sure I get the steps in.
Yeah, great.
So what is your take on digital detoxes and their role in mental health? There's more and more talk about the harm that too much screen time does for us. Or to us.
Yes, that's right, to us. Well, so many things there. I would say, so for the piece that relates most directly to resilience, and there are many others as well, but one that connects with what we spoke about earlier is the sleep. And the impact of being in our technology close to bedtime, not good for sleep. Ideally, we want it at least 1 hour before going to bed. If you cannot imagine that, start small. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But you need to let the brain have a break so that it can move towards a sleep pattern. So that would be an important piece specific to best practice related to resilience. In general, sometimes planning a digital detox is a lot of work and it's complicated given the many demands we have. Sometimes that's not the main thing, I will say, the first thing. Sometimes the first thing will be assuming that we've cleared it 1 hour before sleep. Then maybe it is bringing back activity, physical activity, nutrition, all these other things. And what's beautiful is that if we do that, then we're not so much into the removing the technology, we're adding the healthy behaviors, which then pushes the technology aside a bit more. So that sometimes it's a focus that I will recommend first. In itself, for a lot of people, it is about the deliberate choice. Are you more actively deciding what's working for you? Have you planned to some degree? When is the technology working for you? And when it's just either a habit or something you do that actually takes time that otherwise, had you thought of it, you would have preferred to use differently? Is it impacting your relationships, your productivity, how satisfied you are at the end of your day? And so assuming other more fundamental things have been taken care of, sometimes it is, an action that will be very productive.
So you've mentioned, of course, and who could disagree, that resilience in relationships is very important. How can couples or families use resilience as a tool to navigate tough times together?
Mm-hmm. So I would say first, and it's the same logic as in our work context, but the more we can build it proactively, the better. So we're not waiting for the crisis or the tough moment. We will also deal with it then, but let's talk about it sooner. As a couple who are, let's say, assuming in this case, planning a long time together, as a family, with our children, let's have these conversations. With children, what's also, I think, useful is to remind ourselves as parents that part of what will help build their resilience is experience with the adversity. And sometimes as parents, we wish that, not really, but ideally, if there was zero adversity for our children forever, that would be wonderful, like just ideal. But the reality of life is that it's not the case. And part of our goal and role is to help them become independent. And once they are, there will be adversity. It's normal. It's part of life. So why not, when we are 5 years old and there is a glass of milk on the floor, that we find an appropriate action that the 5-year-old can help in dealing with this situation. Okay, we're going to deal with the mistake, deal with the consequences of the mistake, and learn something from it, and helping put words on it. That's all.
In other words, don't cry over spilt milk. Just help wipe it up.
Well, or it's okay if you cry and you're disappointed, you're sad that it happened.
Right.
And that's what happens. Otherwise,
life's going to go on. It's going to be all right.
It will be. But otherwise, Roger, that's it. Because I've worked with some leaders who were sharing with me how fabulously newly graduated individuals joining the company, doing great work, make their first mistake and fall apart. Even if the culture is great and the culture is saying, that's a mistake, we're going to fix the mistake, deal with it, and learn from it, they don't have as much experience with just that process, and they need to learn it later. So why not, as a family, learn it sooner?
Well, let me ask this. What's a question that you wish more people would ask about resilience?
Well, one of them that interests me greatly for all kinds of reasons is how can we be more AI resilient, right? We've talked sooner about how these adversity moments are sometimes acute moments, but sometimes they're chronic ones. And AI's arrival in our overall lives, professionals and personal lives, is also a demand. And can we, increase our resilience specific to AI?
And back to the idea of psychological safety in relationships. That's critical in the workplace, in marriage, with children, everywhere.
Everywhere. Yes, we want to develop that agility. And it's true for all of these areas, that mental agility that involves our own mental health, the people around us, the resources we have, the self-awareness that we talked about today as well. And all this applies in very specific ways in different contexts, including AI.
Well, Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier, thank you so much for this insightful conversation. You've reminded us that resilience isn't just about bouncing back, it's about building forward. It's not a badge of honor worn after a crisis, but a daily practice rooted in awareness, values, and intentional action. Whether you're leading a team, raising a family, or simply trying to stay afloat in a world that rarely slows down, the message in this episode is clear. You don't have to wing it, you can plan for it. And that plan just might be the most important skill in your leadership toolkit. To learn more about Dr. Marie-Hélène, check out the show notes for this episode. And to grab a free copy of my book, Change Friendly Leadership, go to changefriendly.com. That's changefriendly.com. In other episodes of Leadership, I share my exclusive conversations with top thought leaders who offer smart tips to boost your effectiveness in both your professional and personal life. My guests include superstars like Stephen M.R. Covey, Liz Wiseman, Doug Conant, Dory Clark, Heather Younger, Marshall Goldsmith, Bill George, Jessica Chen, Guy Kawasaki, Dana Perino, Amy Edmondson, Pat Flynn, David Ulrich, and many others who have insightful things to say that can help you turn ideas into breakthroughs. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you can stay informed on what's coming your way. Believe me, folks, you don't want to miss any of our episodes. When you subscribe, you'll also receive regular doses of high-value written content. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, stay safe, be happy, and spread good cheer wherever you go. For Leadership, I'm Roger Dean Duncan.